Hi guys, today we have a very interesting guest, Sandeep from Matic Network. Matic Network recently came into the limelight because it's going to be going on the Binance Launchpad on the 24th of April. So we want to discuss with Sandeep a little bit about Ethereum scalability, how Matic came about, how did the journey in terms of getting to Binance Launchpad, what was that journey like, and how difficult or easy that was, and what it means to be one of the leading projects coming out of the Indian crypto and blockchain ecosystem. Welcome to the show, Sandeep.
Thanks, Tushar, for inviting me here, and thanks to the Decrypt Asia team to for providing me the opportunity to be here.
Sure. So scalability has been a problem in Ethereum for a while. When did you realize that you wanted to work on solving this problem, and when did you realize that you had a good solution for this problem, actually?
So, not only Ethereum, I think scalability is the biggest problem right now with the blockchains. Like when we say scalability, we mean the first of all more applications can build on top of it, and then second thing is that applications of payments. I mean, and then second thing is that it should be more user friendly. That means the speed and the transaction costs a bit light. So that's a problem with blockchains in general. uh, Talking specifically about Matic and how we came into specifically into Matic and what we are doing here is that so basically we were, I mean, we have been in blockchain space for long. All three of us, the co-founders, come from a technical background, and we've been doing various kind of research and other consulting kind of assignments in blockchain in that way. So we were actually looking for some payment solutions in a non like blockchain application before. And we realized that that kind of payments, UPI and other things like were not making sense because it needed some that was a Twitter based idea and things like that. So we were looking for a global payment system, and then we realized that okay, blockchain, I mean, that time it was like huge buzz in November or October of 2017. And we thought that why not use cryptocurrency? And when we started exploring it, we realized that there are large scale problems in it. And then so we needed that scalable and low cost transactions. So we went into exploring various scalability and then low cost transaction spaces. And then came on to Plasma, realized that okay, this is really cool. Started I mean, Jayanti was prolifically contributing into Plasma, and we three also were discussing offline all of these things, like what are the challenges and how we can take it out. And then in that course, why we were collaborating on some of these research problems, Jayanti uh, developed that Plasma MVP, first one of the few first application implementations of Plasma MVP. And then we saw that okay, that this is really great, and we should this can be really big. And also there were a lot of problems in the existing large stream mainstream Plasma space. So we realized that okay, these implementations will not be able to go online because of the usability and implementability issues, which eventually in the hindsight we are correct, because we still don't have a Omise goes like the original, like the Plasma online and in production. And whatever Plasma implementations are there, they again have usability issues. Although they are in the mainstream limelight, usability wise there are problems, and we can discuss more into that, into like Plasma cache and things like that. So yeah, I mean, so we realized that those are some of the problems, and the Matic implementation, but we thought about having an account based implementation will solve a large number of these problems. And in the hindsight, in the last 1 year, we actually have solved most of those problems, and now ready to take it out into the wild. So yeah, so that's a bit of a story behind it.
Yeah, sounds good. So, the couple of words that you said, I think multiple times, which we'll dig into, both scalability as well as usability. I think those are the kind of two big pillars that you guys are trying to focus on. There have been multiple chats about scalability. I think it's very confusing for some of the audience as well. You hear things like sharding, then you hear things like plasma, side chains, child chains, state channels, payment channels. and it's all really, really confusing. So what I want to do is, I mean, overall, I know we want to keep this interview really short, but very quickly, we want to go through these, terms. And I think one of your blog posts, and I'll link up the blog post in the show notes as well, did a really good job of explaining all the different efforts in terms of scalability and how you guys fit in, and how Matic kind of complements some of the other scalability issues and fits
Yeah.
in. So let's
Correct.
start. So I want to take it step by step so that we don't confuse anyone. So, I guess if we take like a triangular approach, at least that's how it is in my head. So at the very base layer, you have the main chain, Ethereum, right, which itself has scalability issues. Sharding is one of the sort of layer one scalability solutions. Could you very quickly talk about what
Yeah.
sharding is and how that helps Ethereum to scale?
Correct. So, just to pounce onto that, I will just take a step back and first discuss about the large or the long term visions of layer one and layer two teams that are working with. So we as a layer two team, we have a long term vision that no matter how scaled L1 becomes, it will always be insufficient if we want them to be like global, either global payment systems or either global application platform. So imagine that somebody saying that, okay, Bitcoin blockchain in itself will become so scalable that every single small micro transaction that you will be buying your coffee every morning on Bitcoin blockchain, it does not make sense logically. Also, if you see the network topology and the kind of trade-offs it takes to to decentralize the transactions, the trade-offs result in the speed and the cost being high. So so we as a team believe that layer one will never be like full blown end user transaction layer. It will always be a settlement layer, and we think that a large number of these computations will move off chain, and there will be a scope of multiple layer 2 solutions depending upon maybe use cases. Some of the layer 2 solutions would be good for some use case, and other ones would be good for some other use cases. So computation will happen off chain, and the settlements will happen on the layer 1 is what our is a goal is. Now coming back to that okay, what are the scaling efforts on layer 1 side? So that blog post you mentioned is a very good one. I would recommend every viewer here to just go through it and go through that diagram pyramid actually. So on layer 1, primarily people are trying to approach things like sharding to scale the layer 1 and break it down into multiple small blockchains which contribute collaborate each other and become like one single network. Like there have been many big projects like Quarkchain and Zilliqa who have been working on these solutions. Ethereum itself has a Casper and big sharding roadmap. So that's on the layer 1. Those are like one of the biggest approaches, and then having more optimal consensus mechanisms like POS, which is less computation specific, and things like that are also some of the efforts on the. So this is the layer 1 side of it, and there are multiple like ZK snarks based, having very small proofs and reducing the size of proofs and all that is our layer 1 approaches. The layer 2 approaches primarily come with three biggest flavors. So one is like state channels, which has been the most explored state. The second one is the side channel approach, where side chain approach, sorry. So where you have like these full blown side chains, side blockchains, which keep on, sometimes we call them checkpointing chains. So they keep on checkpointing their, snapshots onto the main chain. That's a second side chain approach. And the third one, very less trodden, is the true bit approach. So we come specifically from the sidechain part, and on the sidechain also we implement sidechains using Plasma. So Plasma is a framework which gives you some guidelines around, or some security and decentralization related guidelines to take these computations off chain. And and state channels, the previous one is the most, like, many people won't know that Lightning Network is a form of like state channel implementation on Bitcoin. And on Ethereum also there have been multiple attempts. Even now, like Seller Network is one project which is working on state channels, and then Counterfactual has been Raiden Network. These projects have been state channel on Ethereum. We come on from the Plasma, which is the second part I was telling, that Plasma sidechain related background. So yeah.
Sure. So I think to summarize, I think so. We mentioned as far as layer one at the very base level, we have sharding. On the second level, we have three categories that you mentioned. The first one is state channels, and there's you mentioned some projects, Seller, Raiden. In the second sort of category, which is where you fall in, you've got some sort of people who you can work with as well, or maybe kind of they could be your competitors also. So you've got projects like Scale, you've got projects like Loom, yourself, and then the third category, which has not been explored too much, is something like TrueBit. So could you, let's focus on what your domain is. So let's talk about Plasma. So you're a side chain. How does, I mean, for a layman who's kind of trying to understand how Matic works or how Plasma works, what is a side chain, and how does it interact with the main chain? Why have a side chain?
Yeah. So again, like, why have a side chain is the question that doing all the transactions on Ethereum, we just discussed that it's not viable, business friendly, application friendly, user friendly. So taking these computations off chain, you need side chains. Now, how Matic side chains work is that, so these are full blown like EVM side chains. Like, you can actually deploy your smart contracts and have assets on this. So these side chains have their own consensus mechanism, and then they have a validator layer in between, which keeps on checkpointing the the snapshots, you can call it in a very layman language, that what is happening on the sidechain. It keeps on taking a snapshot every 256 blocks. That means roughly around 5 minutes, and it keeps on putting that proof to the main chain. Now, here's when Plasma comes into space. So there are other like sidechain projects also which do not use Plasma. So we'll also try to contrast that, how that is different from a Plasma kind of sidechain. So what happens is that whenever every 5 minutes there is a consensus that happens between the validator layer, which is a fully decentralized layer, and it validates all the block transactions that have happened on the sidechain and creates a proof and submits on the main chain. Now, using Plasma framework, it gives additional powers to the end user, where they can validate some of their transactions or state transitions on the main chain itself. So the concern here is that if you want to have these freely and fully trusted sidechain ecosystem in the future, then these sidechains, even if some sidechain or the other goes rogue, the end user should be able to exit their assets to the main chain itself. They don't need to keep their they don't need to be dependent on the side chain to to give back their assets, which feature is not there with non-Plasma side chains. So for example, let's say POA chain, right? So once you take your asset from Ethereum main chain to POA chain, and then so you are fully dependent on the consensus mechanism of POA chain. If something wrong happens over there, if some the validators collude or whatever, then you have no right on the main chain. Or if somebody censors you, or that network censors you, you have no way to take out your assets from there. Now with Plasma, or like on Matic side chains, if something bad happens for a user, you can actually come on the main chain or go to a Ethereum smart contract and simply ask that, okay, hey, I need my assets back from the side chain, and then you can exit it from the main chain itself. So that's one thing. Second bigger thing comes is the fraud proofs. Like, if let's say in a particular like scenario, people collude, and on the side chain there is some fraudulent activity happening, anybody from the public can come onto the main chain and challenge a particular transaction on the side chain, like using the proofs I just mentioned, that we keep on putting the proof to the main chain. Using that proof, anybody can come and say that, hey, this transaction that happened on my account, or whatever XYZ's account is not valid, and they can actually run a fraud proof. If the fraud proof is successful, the challenge is successful, then the challenger the challenger is able to slash all the stakes of these validators, which actually, so this is also one important thing, the stakes of these validators are on Ethereum main chain. So even if they try to do something fishy, you can actually have a lot of control on them because their stakes are there on Ethereum main chain, right? So I was saying that if a challenger succeeds, then then he is able to slash the large amount of the stake security deposits or the stakes of these validators, and he gets a big reward. So it's actually an incentive for the the public community to to challenge any of the transactions if they find any problems with that. Kind of like a multi-million-dollar bounty program running 24 cross 7. So if you see, and see what these and what Plasma is trying to enforce here is that additional security measures on the main chain itself for sidechain computations. That's the bottom line of that.
Could you give examples of other non-plasma sidechains beyond POA?
I think POA and I think GoChain is also something similar, but
Okay.
I don't know of other sidechains
Okay.
solutions like
And just to understand, I mean, I think what we'll do is, quickly go into some of the dApps that are building on Matic, as well as some of the partnerships that you have. But like one last question, more on the technical side, is just to dig a little bit more into what you just described. I think you described it in a very, very, very easy to follow manner in terms of the relationship between the side chain as well as the main chain. But in terms of your consensus mechanism, um, so you've got stakers. So, like, I just want to understand who the different stakeholders are and where they fit in, right? So, you've got people who actually have stake. So if you own, I don't know what your token is going to be called. Is it
Matic.
Matic? Matic. Okay. So people who have, Matic can be, they are the stakers. Are they the same as you mentioned validators? Are validators the ones producing the new blocks?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
basically, the validator layer is a fairly big layer where you have large number of validators over there. They are the validators is actually the stakers. So
Oh,
if you
it's the same.
become
Okay.
a validator, you have to be a staker. Now,
Okay.
out of those validators, randomly a small set of validators are selected, which are able to produce blocks also,
Okay.
right? So because they will be quick in their transmission of blocks and produce faster blocks. Other validators, however, would be there to validate it, and that random set of block producers also keeps on changing, right? So every, let's say, dynasty period, it will change. So that the overall process is to like break down the problems of decentralization into multiple layers. So a very famous thing is decentralization or scalability trilemma from Vitalik Buterin. It says that out of security, scalability, and decentralization, you can choose only two. So if you see this structure, like the architecture of Matic, and I sometimes find it very beautiful, but it's very simple that you are actually breaking the overall system into three layers: block producer layer, validator layer, and the main chain itself. So you are reducing the number of people in the block producer layer by a random mechanism, uh, which are able to produce faster blocks. So they reduce they solve the scalability over there in terms of faster number of transactions and all. But then that, if you have small number of block producers, then you become something like a EOS and then things like that, where you have like 20-21 block producers, which is actually what they've tried to do is that reduce the number of participants in the block, in the consensus. But they are all alone with that, right? So but in our case, let's say this small number of block producers produce blocks, but on top of them they have one more layer, which is the validator layer, which all the validators are going to validate whatever they are doing, and then they are putting a checkpoint onto the main chain, right? So that the first layer, the block producer layer, solves the scalability part, speed parts, and all that, things like that. The second and the third layer solve the decentralization and the security part. So second layer, which is the validator layer, solves the decentralization, which is a large layer, and if your transactions are not going through, you can broadcast it to any of the validators and stuff like that. And then on the main chain, you have the final layer of security, which everybody has to abide by, because the main chain is more like a guardian angel on top of this network, right? If you do something wrong, if somebody is able to prove it on the main chain to the angel, or the Supreme Court, you can call it the main chain, so they can take harsh action against you.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I think the way you described it again, I think it was, and I think this is something that is in your blog post as well, where you have
mhm.
the block producers at the bottom, and then you
Yeah,
have the validators sitting on top of the block producers, and at the top layer you have the main chain,
correct.
and so you leverage the security of the of Ethereum, but then
Yeah,
you kind of focus on the other two aspects of the scalability trilemma through the other two
yes,
layers.
yes,
And again, I think I would encourage everyone to go back
yeah.
to that blog post, because I think it's difficult to kind of describe it when you're speaking, but I think once you see it in a picture, it
Mhm,
becomes very clear, or at least that's the way I work.
mhm,
So a big focus for you has been usability. You mentioned that word a few times. You've created a
mhm.
Plasma wallet, and at least to my knowledge, I'm not sure. I mean, I think you would know better, but I don't think anyone. I don't know of any other projects building a Plasma wallet. Could you talk a little bit about that? What your motivation was? Um, I mean, I guess your motivation is to make sure that it's easy for you for the users to use. But could you talk a little bit more about that Plasma wallet and
Yeah,
how that helps the Matic ecosystem in general?
correct. So basically, if you see within our team, the long term goal for us is to make blockchains invisible. Like the mass adoption will come for the users when they don't know that they're even interacting with a blockchain or something as complex as a blockchain, right? the and that's the same with the normal internet. Like you don't, like a normal user, my mom, my dad don't realize that they are interacting with http and tcp/ip and rpc protocols in the background, right? They don't need to. So that is the core motivation behind having a fully highly user experience evolved wallet. And I think for now, for the kind of user experience now, we have done a fair amount of fair job with that in terms of isolating many of these internal details onto that. And then Plasma also, once a user actually wants to use a Plasma sidechain, you have these features like you have to draw deposit and withdraw your chains on the sidechain, funds on the sidechain, from the sidechain to main chain. So just to make it very easier for the user. And then many of the people would be knowing that we are also the core implementers of the wallet connect protocol, which is a ethereum a grant protocol. So that protocol actually allows the user to have their private keys always on their phone. So you know I mean, the way of interaction with any dApp or any application becomes like, you simply, like, you use a WhatsApp web, right? So you have a QR code, you scan and give permission, and then you enter into that application, and from there, whatever you do, that remains in that scope of that authorization that you have provided. Any transactions you have to do, either you can give that app the permissions to do transactions on your behalf, or you can allow each transaction. So anytime you try to do a transaction on any app on web or anywhere else, even on mobile app, it will pop up on your wallet, the wallet connect wallet, and then you have to approve from there, right? So as a user, after a particular point, you won't even know. Let's say if I am using one particular app, and I've given the permission to app, and it's my trusted app, I don't even need to know that, okay, actually I'm actually signing a blockchain transaction in front of me. It simply goes to your mobile, gets the signature from the private key there, relays back to the network, and the interaction happens in that way. So yeah, that's the core philosophy about the wallet, to make it very easy for the users, safe for the users. So right now, you have to either have a MetaMask, or if you are going on a public computer and you want to use a dApp, you have to actually put your private key, or put your mnemonic onto there and download MetaMask, and then you can use it. But imagine that future with something like a MetaMask wallet connect enabled Matic wallet. So you simply go to any public place, you want to open a tab, simply open it. It will show you a QR code. You'll scan it and log in into that. Whatever you want to do it. Even if you forget to log out from there, you can log out all the applications from your phone itself. So that kind of future we want to promote with the wallet.
Yeah, I mean that actually, I think that was a great description again. I recently delegated my Loom, and that was not a
Hmm.
very. I mean, you have
Good
to read
tool.
the guide and make sure that you don't miss any of the processes while moving your assets from the main
Hmm.
chain
Hmm.
to the side chain. So I think
Correct.
That is super, super important. You have some
Hopefully
interesting.
our wallet will be, a bit better in that scope, and it will of course it will keep on evolving with more user input.
Yeah.
So
I,
yeah,
I
so
mean, a quick question, actually. I mean, I had a follow-up question on that. So, do you still have to move your assets from the main chain to the side chain?
so when you are, so let's say you have 100 ether on, or 10 ether on main
Yeah.
chain, and you want
Yeah.
to move let's say 10 ether to side chain and use it there for some gaming or whatever, then you have to like do one transaction. It's like, you use these applications like Paytm and all, right? So you have money in your bank, and you use Paytm or Venmo. You take some of your money to Paytm or Venmo, and then you use it. And if you want to withdraw it, you can withdraw it to the main chain. So consider Ethereum as your bank, and this sidechain as like a decentralized Paytm. You take it there, use whatever you want to use, play games, pay bills, whatever. Whenever you want to, bring the leftover money back, you can bring it back.
Okay. And again, and this might be, but so when you once you've moved your assets from the main chain to the side chain, um, are you still able to send assets to? I guess within the Matic ecosystem, you will be able to interact with other ERC20 tokens, right?
Yes.
Within the Matic wallet,
Yeah.
right?
And the beauty is that, even like, let's say you brought your money from the main chain to side chain, like 10 ether, and I am not there on the main chain,
Yeah,
on the Matic side chain,
that
right?
was my next
Just like,
question. Yeah.
yeah. So you send it to me, like you still send it to my normal Ethereum address. I give you my Ethereum address, you send it to that. I will be able, only thing from the receiver side is that I will have to, go to the Matic sidechain to claim it back, right?
Okay.
Otherwise,
So
otherwise,
on the receiver side, you still have to go to the Matic chain, right?
yes, yes.
It's not like you're receiving into your Ethereum wallet and that's
Ethereum,
it.
no, no. So on the receiver side, you have to do. But imagine that kind of, feature with like a, I mean, for example, if you want to use Lightning Network, then both the parties have to be on Lightning. They need to have a channel and stuff like that, right? And that's where we think that in terms of payments, we will, we can give the Lightning Network or the state channel implementation applications or the protocols run for their money, because in our case the user experience is extremely good. Like, you don't have to create any channels and stuff like that. Simply do the transactions, whatever you want to do. The receiving party has to withdraw it. They are at their own discretion. If they think that the amounts are big enough, they want to withdraw, it's okay. And it's also like, more about creating that ecosystem. Like on Paytm, when you send money, or Venmo, when you send money to me, generally, because the ecosystem has become so big and I can use it at so many avenues, I don't end up withdrawing it to the main chain. The end goal is that, you should have enough amount of opportunities to spend those tokens or like your assets on the side chain itself.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So they never leave the Matic ecosystem. You
So,
don't
so
need
yeah,
to.
that's the network effect. That's the network effect part of it, right?
Yeah, sounds good. And you have some interesting applications building on Matic now, and
Mhm.
you also had some interesting partnerships. Could you talk a little bit about what those interesting ones are? Some
Mm.
that some that are already there, and also like the kind of applications that you would want to see on Matic, or what Matic is suited for. I know a big focus for you beyond the usual applications. Beyond like things like gaming, a big focus for you is decentralized finance, and you want to be kind of geared towards that. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So as you summarize it very well, that the general blockchain use cases like gaming and payments and all that, they have been explored by others, and Matic is also fully like much advanced, I would say, in comparison to the other solutions in these regards. But apart from that, we have a heavy focus on decentralized finance, which we think is like picking up very fast. So I think payments, decentralized finance, and gaming are going to be the bigger use cases, which will get adopted first, and then later other things will follow. So yeah, so focus is there, and to
Yeah. I think one of the announcements, you're also trying to build sort of the, different parts of the tech stack within the Matic ecosystem. You made an announcement with Anchor regarding cloud computing. Again, do you have similar other partnerships kind of in the pipeline, or like what's your, going forward, how will the Matic ecosystem look like?
yeah.
So, there are two parts of it. So you are, this is a very pertinent question. So there are two parts of our adoption strategy. One is that, of course, the applications which can use Matic network sidechains to build their decentralized applications and things like that. The other part we are approaching is that what, like, and that comes under the, the viral network effects, is to enable some of the other, platforms or protocols to use whatever Matic is more suitable to be used for their ecosystems also. So if imagine, in future, multiple protocols, also apart from the applications that we have, that we discuss, gaming and stuff like that, decentralized finance. Apart from that, if other protocols also are able to use Matic network for the purposes where Matic network is slightly better or provides better features, that also adds to the overall network effect of the side chains. So that's the core strategy over there, and we have a lot of projects like that whom we are discussing with, and then we want to first have some sort of technical implementations in hand, and then kind of take them out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I'm super excited to regarding all those developments. I mean, I think we're kind of nearing the half an hour mark. What I
Mm-hmm.
want to do is talk. I mean, we've talked a lot about Matic. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
been a pretty interesting and difficult journey for you as well. We met in July, August last year, I think, and you've had an incredibly tough time fundraising. That
Mm-hmm.
was also not the easiest of times to fundraise,
Mm-hmm.
but also I think, and again, I would want to get your opinion as well, whether geography, so, you're based out of, I think you're currently in San Francisco, but I think some of your team is based out of India. Did that impact your kind of journey? Like, how difficult was it to fundraise? And how did Binance happen, and how does that help you?
Yeah, so I mean, geography does make a lot of difference. Like the teams which are there, either in, especially the blockchain teams who are there in San Francisco, or Korean ecosystem or Chinese ecosystem, for them raising money and going out to the public is slightly easier, because they have access to those funds, and those funds can actually trust those people slightly easier than trusting a team based out of, let's say, India, or some other countries like that, maybe some other countries of the subcontinent. So that does elongate your struggle a bit. And we also did that a lot, like last, and the markets were also really bad at that time. So but we, I think we did a good job at staying very lean, and at very less cost. We kept on building and kept on shipping out our things. And Binance is like a leading game changer in this space, I would say. And then right now, the kind of work that they are doing for the ecosystem to support teams, fellowships, they are like supporting open source contributors by their fellowships. And the Binance Labs incubation is helping a lot of small time startups to build their applications and build their MVP and stuff. So they're doing a lot of work, and I think we got benefited from that those initiatives of Binance. They saw us, saw about our post. So we actually keep featuring in the Ethereum weekly updates, wherever we are putting up a new, let's say, implementation or approach to solve some problem. So I think they saw us about that from there, and then initially reached out in a lighter manner, and then kept on watching us and our growth, and then went into more of like a heavy handed evaluation. And for us, like, it was a very rigorous and very long evaluation. It took, like, for us, it took almost like I think 7-8 months. I mean, you were talking about, we met in back in August. I think by that time our brief, like, initial evaluation had started at that time itself. But of course, that was very confidential at that time, and then it slowly kept on. And I think for any budding developer, I think your question is more towards, like, if some developers are looking at it, especially from the India space, I would say that keep shipping out your product, keep reaching out to the community, because as a startup, you are expected to not only technically develop things but also take it out to public, right? So keep doing that, keep interacting on Twitter. Crypto Twitter is like, one of the main areas where you can showcase these. And then, the better ecosystem players in this space will find out. What about you? Specifically for the Indian and upcoming developers, we have launched a very big 500k developer support program USD. So that program is purely focused towards the teams like us, because one of the core resolutions of our co-founding team has been that the problems that we faced, and I think we also, like, I think I mentioned to you sometime also that we, like, it's like, for me personally, because I was leading this fundraising effort, for me it's my like sort of my life mission, that I would try to reduce these problems for other startups, so especially the early stage ones. So yeah, that way, I mean, we have already done that. Like, I think you must have seen the crypto store applications on Twitter, and their demos and things like that. So they are very young age kid, hardly 19, 20 years old, and we are supporting them every way we can to for them to build their application.
Yeah.
And of
No,
course,
I know it's, I mean, I've been following a little bit, and we've been in touch a little bit. I know how difficult the journey's been for you, but I think, I think this is a great note to end the interview on also. But I think that's the power of this new sort of industry as well, right? Where you can actually access, instead of, I think things are becoming more meritocratic, like you said, right?
yeah,
If you keep building, keep shipping, if you stay persistent, then at some point you will get noticed and you'll get access to global capital markets.
correct,
Right?
exactly.
It's you don't have to just rely on VCs from a particular region. You can actually just kind of
Reach out to anyone, everyone. Yeah,
exactly,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And I think that's the power of this industry as well. I guess that's what this industry stands for as well.
Yep, yep,
Yeah.
yep.
All right, Sandeep, thank you so much for taking the time. It's been great chatting, and I look forward to all the developments coming
Yeah.
from your end.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. I mean, it's always good to chat with you. It was like, in this format also, it was very good. And, look forward to keep speaking to you guys also. Yeah.